Hello everyone, welcome back. So I thought I would do a reading update today. I have been reading quite a bit lately, quite a bit more than I have for some time. I think with the change of the seasons, getting darker, being colder, that I've just really just kind of come in from the world, in, and just read more. And I've been enjoying that. Been reading a lot and not making very many videos. So one of the reasons there are going to be so many books in this is that I forgot actually my last wrap up videos, whatever you want to call them. I've never really figured out what to call them. Uh, Nothing seems right because they're not regular, and they're not really wrap ups, and they're not really, uh, I called them book reports for a while. But anyway, that's kind of getting down into the minutia. Uh, what I'm trying to say is that I forgot to talk about two of the books last time, and I couldn't talk about one because I had lost it. And I looked all over this house. I looked upstairs, downstairs. I looked in every room. I looked underneath things. And I came in here to do this video. And I thought, well, I'm going to clean up just a little bit because you can't really see it, but the table behind me was much messier. And I moved a book, and it was right there. So I'm going to talk about it now. And I don't know if I'll remember it particularly well, and I apologize for that, but I did enjoy it. So I read it about a month ago. It is Ernest K. Gann's Island in the Sky. Maybe that's Gann, Ernest K. Gann. Not sure. This is about non-combat pilots during World War II, so flying cargo planes and that sort of thing. And they are flying, I believe, like I said, it's been about a month since I read this, so cut me some slack, please. They are flying from Iceland into Canada, from what I remember. And it's a very treacherous route. And Ernest K. Gann was a pilot for quite some time during this period. So he flew during this period. He flew before the war. He flew after the war. And then he went into writing books. And so he has a very romantic view of all this. And he really liked to portray pilots as being these incredibly tough, brave, strong-willed men, and because it's very much a man's world at this time. So this would have been in the 40s. And I think he laid that on a little thick sometimes. They are hard drinking. They are they flout the rules. They do their own thing. They are iron-willed, and they have extremely strong values and virtues. And that was an interesting look at it, because you kind of read it and you think, well, this is how Gann saw himself, right? As this romantic figure. And what it is about, though, is it's about a cargo plane, and they are coming back from Iceland into Canada, and they lose track of where they are. They run into a storm, they lose track of where they are, and they wind up crash landing on a frozen lake in a northern part of Canada, which at this time is just kind of an uncharted region. And so it is about not only survival on the ice, which is, this great cover. These books, these Bantam Air and Space, they have these great covers. They really do. So this is a novel, but Bantam Air and Space was both fiction and nonfiction. They're really interesting. And I just really like that design with the silver and the red, white, and blue. But they have it very bad because this is northern Canada during the winter time. So it is a frozen, snowy wasteland, and it is below zero. And I'm not exactly sure where they crash landed. I should have looked that up for this, but I was just kind of excited to find this after so long. I don't lose books. I lost another book about a year ago. It is Cecil Woodham Smith's The Reason Why, in the 60s purple kind of psychedelic time edition, and I cannot find that thing anywhere. I've looked high and low. I've looked under couch cushions. I've looked under the couch. I've looked everywhere I can think of. I've looked in places it would not be, and I have no idea where it is, and I'll probably never find it. I lost a pair of sunglasses one time I put in the closet 15 years ago. Uh, anyway, never found them either. So this is also about, sorry for that roundabout discussion there, but this is also about pilots who know these men, who are just devastated that they are down and are going out on these long flights into this unknown region in these awful conditions, flying conditions. And they have their own problems to deal with. You know, their engines don't always work right. Their radio equipment doesn't always work right. They get lost. They almost die themselves. But it was quite good. And I was going to read an excerpt, but I was reading it there, and I'm not sure why I chose this one. And it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't flow to me the way it did a month ago. So it's the only one I chose, and apparently I would read it, but it was really long, and I don't think it captured what I wanted it to capture, really. So that is Ernest K. Gann's Island in the Sky. Good book. Wish I could have described it better for you. Hopefully I don't lose any more books. So after that, I read this. I didn't really, I mean, I did read it. There are parts to be read, but really it's okay, it is a book of pictures of mailboxes throughout the United States. So Rachel Epstein. Okay, Rachel Epstein's Mailbox, U.S.A. I read this in an evening. It wasn't, and it's been about a month ago now, but it is just, she went from coast to coast photographing mailboxes that people had made themselves or that someone had made for them. Just all these interesting mailboxes of all these different kinds. There's a giant corn cob. And it was really interesting. You know, where I live, you don't really see mailboxes like that. Or I don't ever see them anyway. I kind of feel like, so this is from the 90s, and the individual handmade mailbox sort of seems to be like a thing from the past as far as I can tell. I'm sure there are still some. I see painted mailboxes sometimes that are kind of interesting, but I never see, you know, I really like the RV there. That's one of my favorite ones in the whole book, the RV. And I just thought this was a lot of fun. This is a giant fishing reel. So it's something like 2 feet long and over 1.5 feet wide. It's quite big, weighs several hundred pounds. And some of the stories are just really interesting. Here's a giant one in Newellton, Louisiana. So that, I don't know if you can tell from the picture, but it's really, really big. It's like 14 feet tall or something. And people are pretty creative. Here's a gas pump. Yeah, okay. So I just thought that was an interesting book. And it was only $1, so it wasn't a huge expense or anything. And like I said, I've been looking at a lot of photography books lately because I did buy a camera, a used camera, and I have been taking hundreds and hundreds of pictures lately. That's what I've been doing. None of them have been particularly good. Okay, out of hundreds and hundreds, I would say maybe 6 or 7 have been pretty good so far. And not pretty good like by anyone's standards but my own. Oh, I think I already showed this one. Anyway, that is Rachel Epstein's Mailbox, U.S.A. She said there was going to be a follow-up to this. I don't know if there ever was, but I'd like to see that. After that, we have something that I have mixed feelings about, and I've kind of been wondering how to talk about it. It is Art Spiegelman's In the Shadow of No Towers, which you can see is really big. So Art Spiegelman, he's a not exactly sure what his title is, whether he's like a graphic novelist or a comic strip creator. I don't know. I'm not really big on this sort of thing, so I don't really know the terminology. But this is Art Spiegelman's take on his thoughts, his feelings, his anxieties in the wake of 9/11, the years after 9/11. And so Spiegelman was in New York City. His daughter went to school very close to the World Trade Centers on 9/11. And part of it is about that, about his going to the school with his wife to find their daughter. And part of it, it's just, there's not very much of it. It's only about 10 pages long. It is kind of hard to explain because I expected it to be about 9/11, like the day of 9/11, but this is more about his experience with the politics of the time. He seemed almost to be more concerned with like the 2000 election than he was with 9/11, even though he was there and he saw it himself. I don't know. This was a weird one for me. But it is, someone graphically coming to terms with their emotions and their thoughts. And he was really angry, for instance, that they had made smoking illegal in New York City, like indoors, in bars and things. I don't know. I just didn't click with this one, and that's why I'm not doing a very good job of explaining it. I just, the last 10 pages or so are all old comics from about 100 years ago. And I didn't really understand why they were added to the book. I mean, I'm not really, I don't know. Like I said, this is just one I didn't quite get. But it was interesting, and it does have some very, very interesting artwork. I would still like to read Mouse very much. I don't know. I just didn't get along with this book. It was just kind of a strange read, just kind of disjointed, and I just didn't click with that one. So this is one I talked about in one of my previous videos as a possibility. It is Donald Harstad's 11 Days. And you can see I didn't take the sticker off. These Goodwill stickers are so sticky now that they tear covers. And to get them off, I have to heat them up and peel them off. And I've never had to go through all that trouble before, and I really despise having to do it now. Because I buy a lot of books, and my dogs really hate the hairdryer, so they bark endlessly while I'm doing it. So I'm only peeling the stickers off of books that I like now. The ones that I'm going to keep. But anyway, as you can see, the sticker is still on this one. And that's because this was very middle of the road for me. So what the whole book is about, a sheriff's department in Iowa, I believe in Iowa, in the Midwest, in the 90s. It reads more like a book from the 80s, first of all. So Donald Harstad was a small town sheriff for a while, or he worked in the sheriff's department. And so he has really good insight into that sort of thing, into what it was like to work in a sheriff's department in a small town in the Midwest in the 90s. That's pretty cool. That's very interesting. And that wasn't my problem with the book so much as that it is told in this very detached way. And it is told in like past tense, like first person past tense. And some of the most interesting parts are not actually seen firsthand, or they're seen firsthand and then described in past tense ways. So, like, oh yeah, by the way, this happened. Like, oh yeah, and we picked him up after that, and it's just so. But it is about a murder. There is a murder in a farmhouse, and when what was his name? Carl Houseman, Deputy Sheriff Carl Houseman gets there. There is a dead guy in the house, and there is some satanic stuff around, and so after that, they find another farmhouse on the other side of town that has got more bodies in it and more satanic stuff. And it is about these small town deputies coming to terms with this satanic coven in their town, trying to figure out who killed these people and why. And it very much had that satanic panic quality of the 80s. That's what I'm talking about. That's why it feels more like an 80s book than a 90s book, because of the whole satanic panic. And really, it seems like it was just kind of, I don't know, it was full of that satanic panic kind of stuff where several of the murdered characters were gay, and they felt like this is where they could be free in this Satanism. And they bring in an outsider from New York City who, on the back it's kind of, oh, they're bringing in an outsider, but the outsider really is only in the like 10 pages. And it builds to this climax that wasn't really, it was too over the top. It was way too over the top, I think. I'm not going to give it away. It's a mystery, Uh, I think it was pretty good for a first novel. I think it could have been better, but I did enjoy it. I just never going to read it again. I do wonder if Donald Harstad ever put out more books, and if they were progressively better, because that does happen sometimes. Sometimes you put out a book, it's not very good, and you get better. Sometimes you put out a book and it's not very good, and the next one is worse. I don't know. So that is 11 Days by Donald Harstad. I wish I had more to say about it, but it was really just kind of a run-of-the-mill police procedural in a small town. And like I said, that first-person, past tense sort of narrative is really kind of grating at times, because we feel very detached from what's going on, and that's something else. I was routinely forgetting which character was which, and that's never a good sign. That is never a good sign. And there's a lot of, I don't know, it just wasn't particularly my cup of tea. Yeah, okay, so that is the last book I'm going to talk about in this video here. That is 11 Days by Donald Harstad. But I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope you will join me for the second part of this video. And so I'll see you next time.